rehearsals, and it was the Wurzels and Bucks Fizz. I wouldn't bother.
Coming here for the music or for the charity?
For charity and the music. It was a thrill to be able to go back to the Polytechnic and go in with this ticket and say, we've got one, we've got one, we've got one.
I stayed on the phone for hours while it was engaged, like about 4 hours, just ringing, putting it down, ringing, putting it down.
I got through after 4 hours, that's all it took, with my mum's credit card.
That's right.
God bless her.
The tickets sold out in minutes, but one fruit and veg seller in Cheshire decided to do something a bit more ambitious.
The Live Aid concert will be the biggest televised event the world has ever seen. Now, in Wembley Stadium, there'll be 2 giant television screens, which will be receiving the American end of the concert live by satellite. There's only one other vast television screen, mobile, in the country, and that won't be at any stadium. No, that'll be right here, in this field at Pot Shrigley, near Bollington, in Cheshire.
I'd got the biggest screen in Europe, this bloody big screen, and nowhere to put it. And anyway, Ches Home, local lad, local farmer, he said, do it on my field. And it went from like a small little idea to something quite large, really.
Geldof had the date, the venues, the satellites, and now the audience, but still, no lineup.
You would think now, looking back, the greatest show on earth. Every artist in the world must have clamoured to play at Live Aid. That wasn't the case whatsoever. It was the exact opposite. There were many, many artists who need a great deal of convincing, and managers who were sceptical that it would take place and it would be first class and it would show their artist in a good light and that it was real, that it would actually take place. And so Bob would use bluff and bluster and outright porky pies. He'd phone one artist, for example, he'd phone Elton and say, Queen and Bowie are in, and then he'd phone Bowie and say, Elton and Queen are in, and they weren't in. He was making it up.
The best way is to make them feel threatened by their peers. So it gets to the point, if you're not on it, well then, who are you in the hierarchy? So if you've got Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, David Bowie, Bob Dylan, who the fuck are you that you're not doing it?
For bands who had split up, like Status Quo, Geldof played the role of marriage counsellor.
He said nobody's interested in doing it, he can't get anybody to... And he said, we said, we're not happening, we're unrehearsed, and he said, it doesn't matter fuck what you sound like as long as you're there. He could have said, we really need you guys, you're great, but he didn't.
Live Aid still needed the supergroups of the age. Suddenly, a breakthrough.
I simply looked down at my date sheet and I noticed that we were playing a 12-night run at Wembley Arena across that period, and when he said the date was July the 13th, 1985, I noticed that we were playing at Wembley Arena on July the 13th, 1985. And I literally said to him, well, we'll just walk across, which is what we did, and we'll do the performance, and then as long as we can have a time slot where we can get back to play to the 12,000 odd people who I hoped at that point were going to buy tickets for our show.
The only thing I do remember thinking was whether in fact we'd be able to get it done in time and not to be able to get back and do the other gig.
Several other managers subsequently rang me and said, are you doing this show at Wembley? Do you think X should do it?
It was an accident of timing that proved a critical breakthrough.
Ringing for you.
People actually started calling up and saying, well, you know, we're doing the show, we'd like to be on at 6 o'clock, right? Well, I said, okay, but you're doing the show bit's good enough, right? Could we just do the billing bit later? And of course, you know, Radio Bicknell had told everybody what time he was on, right? So they're all scrabbling now, because well, naturally you're a manager and you say, my act's going to do this thing, you know. What's the next thing? You want to get the best bit on the bill.
Before Dire Straits said yes, bands would do anything to get out of doing Live Aid. Now, there was a mad rush to get in.
Are we on while America is watching? You know, that was probably a question coming from my office to the promoters and to Geldof as to what time of the day we went on. There was a bit of jostling that went on during the run-up to the show?
No, I wanted to do it, because it was an important thing to do.
I remember at the time it was really frowned on if you said, oh, it would be good for our career. So no one ever kind of mentioned that anyway. It was all kept kind of underneath.
You knew how important it would be, not just for the cause, but for your own career.
I've read some criticism about people saying, well, they just did it because they wanted publicity. None of us needed publicity.
It's not lie, you think things, it's a wonderful cause and it was a wonderful day for the music business, but don't tell me there was one act there that wasn't aware that there would be more than 1 billion people watching.
Yes, I'm lucky, yes, I'm lucky.
But Geldof's idol, Mick Jagger, still hadn't taken the bait, even though Geldof had been stalking him for weeks.
Keith, and all that. So he said it'll be a nightmare, he said, but, I'll do it.
Mick Jagger agreed to perform in America without the Stones, but then he and his mate David Bowie had another brainwave, a transatlantic duet.
At one point, I was going to do my part of the song in England, and Jagger was going to be in the States doing his part over there.
I said, how do we do that? He's in, you're in America, he's here.
But we couldn't find anybody who was fully convinced that we could actually sing at the same time and make it work everywhere. So we abandoned that idea anyway.
He said, well, can't we do something with a spaceship? And there was this whole argument going on about which of them was going to be sitting in the rocket singing. I actually made a call to NASA. So, we got any rockets going up? We'd like one to put Mick Jagger on. And I could imagine, go, who's this nutcase? What?
The space shuttle was abandoned in favour of something more down to earth.
I genuinely didn't know that they were going to go off to a studio and do dancing in the street, which is, so apt. And then knocked off a video, which is hilarious, these two sort of old queens trying to out-camp each other, really. And it went to #1 and the money came to us.
As the cast list got longer, the tabloids lapped up every detail. But the serious music fans' Bible remained more po-faced.
The NME was really steeped in what we'd now call an indie kind of attitude, in which anything to do with the mainstream is probably bad. Anything that is deeply unpopular is probably good. Live Aid was perhaps the most mainstream event which any of us had ever seen, actually, in our lives. And it was therefore hardly a very cool thing to attach one's self to.
The black press was even more critical, furious at what it saw as the deliberate exclusion of black British artists. The Voice newspaper called it the Band-Aid blacklist.
Yet again, somehow we weren't part of what was going on in the country. Of course a lot of people felt pissed off, a lot of people felt as though, fuck you, here it goes again.
As this was a concert for famine relief in Africa, perhaps 1 or 2 Africans, maybe valid and valuable additions to the lineup. Oh, no. You can't have any of that.
A journalist who suggests there should be more black performers on the bill at Wembley gets short shrift.
Thanks, mate. We don't need someone to pull a crowd. We need to get money to stop people dying. And I don't care if they're orange, luminous pink or green. The object is to stop people dying.
Political correctness, thank God, wasn't that terrible at that time. So we didn't have to have a one-legged lesbian and all the rest of it. We were just putting a show together.
Geldof did want the black American stars of We Are the World, but most of them didn't want to know.
We went to all of the major black acts who were popular at that time, and they all said no. But we couldn't explain that to people. We had this unbelievable discussion with Michael Jackson's people saying this is to help people in Africa. He just wasn't interested.
In America, there was an agenda, or that was in a way bought from their Band-Aid record of that community of black acts committing or not, and it was like a block vote. And unfortunately, the block vote sort of went against the Philadelphia show from the black artist community.
The Wembley concert was finally falling into place, but the all-important American end was falling apart.
After lunch, bad news. Promoter Harvey Goldsmith has received a 4-foot-long telex from the American organisers of the Philadelphia concert.
With just 3 weeks to go, there were few confirmed acts in the American bill, and the erratic promoter Bill Graham had stopped returning Geldof's calls.
America was horrendous, and I was in a complete panic. I wouldn't show it, but like I really did not sleep about America because we weren't kept in touch, and you know, and Harvey and I went there, and it was a mess. I mean, it was a mess when we went into the office, and Bill Graham was rude and superior and very distracted.
Bob thought Graham would go out and secure performers, and that's not what he did. We put a team together. We literally picked up the phone and just started calling people, and Graham wasn't really participating in it.
Rumours now reached London that Graham was actively undermining the show he was supposed to be promoting.
We were hearing from some artists that he was telling them behind our backs that the show wouldn't take place and that it wasn't well organised and they shouldn't participate and it would damage their careers. And he, in fact, put some artists off.
Paul Simon pulled out because of Bill Graham's behaviour, and Paul called me. I can't do it, man. I'm not on a star thing, he said, but I just can't put up with this behaviour, you know, from Graham. He's just rude and insulting. So I was going...
America was rapidly slipping down the drain. Without the US show, there would be no satellite link-up and no global event. Goldsmith's sidekick, Pete Smith, was sent to America to whip Bill Graham's ass.
He said, this show can't happen. And he said, do you see all those bits of paper on my desk? I said, yeah, I've been looking at those. He said, well, those are all of the artists, you know, that could play at Philadelphia, you know, the American artists. And I said, so? He said, I refuse to work with half of these people. He's quite a bullish guy. Right? So me being the optimist, I said to him, well, there's a lot of bits of paper. What about the other half? And he looked at me and said, they refuse to work with me.
It wasn't just the stars who had a problem with Bill Graham. His relationship with the TV producers reached crisis point.
The television people would come in and they would have a little meeting with us, and it would always end in Bill yelling at them.
He was doing a concert, and we were doing a television show. So there was a conflict, and his personality is such. He's theatrical, he's dramatic, and so we didn't work together well.
It didn't resolve itself. They hated each other. I got custody of Bill.
Geldof and Goldsmith threatened to sack Bill Graham.
I was piggy in the middle. That's exactly what I was. I was right smack in the middle, and there wasn't anything to do but keep these two people from killing each other.
And as if all this bad blood wasn't enough, chart-topping band Huey Lewis and the News suddenly pulled out.
Mysteriously, we would get withdrawals. And that's when we dug into it and found, as I said, there were interest groups who were calling artists, actually telling them not to participate.
So far, few stars from the record We Are the World had come on board.
In a nutshell, they didn't want to be superseded, I don't think, USA for Africa, by something they thought was in effect a Band-Aid enterprise. I wanted to unify the two.
The same kind of skepticism I had about Live Aid was had by a lot of people. At the time, it looked